Hello, and welcome back to the Wealthy by Design show. I'm Jane Summersett, your host. Today's episode is going to be a bit of a personal reflection. I want to share why I'm so interested in building a wealthy life and why financial security matters to me, and how all of this ties into living with intention rather than just moving through life on autopilot. I'll also touch briefly on the first month of podcasting and some reflections from the January episodes, very briefly, but the main focus today is something I like to do every year, especially as someone who's deeply focused on finances and long-term security. At the beginning of each year, I track my net worth. I want to walk through what net worth actually is and how I personally look at it, how I track it, and why I find it such an important tool. I'll also talk about which parts of net worth I pay most attention to and why. Finally, I'll share a few average and median net worth numbers from the Federal Reserve's Survey of Consumer Finances. I think it's helpful to have a broader baseline and some real context when we're thinking about our own financial progress. So settle in, follow along, and always, if you have questions, thoughts, or suggestions, just DM me or email me at thewealthybydesignshow@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening. Wealth doesn't start with money. It starts with clarity, balance, and intention. So over the last few episodes, we've listened to 4 people who have all followed a similar arc. They started down one career path, lived a full life, gathered experience across different seasons, and then stopped to reevaluate how they actually wanted to spend their time. Every one of them eventually built something of their own using what they already knew. And the common thread, they owned their time. So that is what planning is really about. One thing I do every year is plan ahead, intentionally and visibly. Yes, I track net worth, not because the number defines me, but because it gives me an objective marker of progress when it feels like nothing is moving or I'm sliding backwards. And it's grounding and it's good feedback. But just as important, so this year, my husband and I put a full calendar on the wall, all 12 months, and then we physically mapped out time off, family time, and time that's projected just for us. So when you can see your life, you can stop pretending you'll get to it later, and later is not a strategy. So my journey started deep in the FIRE mindset, work hard, save aggressively, pay off debt, push through. And then I started watching something that honestly changed me and changed my mindset. I watched clinicians and professionals who had built long, meaningful careers finally retire, sometimes early, and within a few years, their health declined rapidly. Some passed away, others became physically limited almost immediately. And at the same time, I noticed a pattern in myself. I'd push all year, focused, driven, high-performing, and then the moment I slowed down for a holiday or a short break, I'd get sick every time. And that wasn't stress I felt. It was the stress of my body quietly, what it was carrying. It was a slow burn, and my body was telling me, this is not a sustainable pace. So I'm done watching people work themselves to death. I'm done with burnout being normalized. What changed wasn't my work. It was my mindset. Structurally, my life still looks similar, but now I listen. I slow down a little earlier. I think I ask better questions. What do I actually need right now? What are 1 or 2 small specific changes that will make a big impact long term? I don't get sick on my breaks anymore. I love my profession. I'm more present, more efficient, kinder. When you're rested and inspired, you produce better work, and that's abundance. This is why I don't believe in waiting as well. A 6-month trip doesn't have to be 6 months. A dream vacation doesn't have to be expensive to be meaningful. What matters is clarity of purpose. If the goal is to catch a bonefish on a fly, maybe that means a luxury resort, or maybe it means a simple island, a local guide for a few days, and maybe some do-it-yourself fishing. Same goal, different structure. But flexibility is wealth for me. I plan what I want from the experience first, then I design the finances around it. Or I shift other areas of the year to make it work. It's all possible. The approach is the difference. I plan to retire, and I plan to retire now. So call it FIRE, Coast FIRE, financial independence, next endeavor. I call it financial independence, retire now. And also for the people who haven't really heard much about the FIRE movement, which stands for Financial Independence, Retire Early. The idea behind FIRE started gaining traction, I believe, in the late 1990s and early 2000s, especially as people began questioning the traditional model of working nonstop until their mid or late 60s. So the core concept isn't new per se, but financial independence has been a goal for generations, and retiring early has always existed in some form. What the FIRE community did really is actually make a community about being intentional with money. So, and more recently, the movement became much more mainstream, especially with voices like Mr. Money Mustache, who helped show that financial independence doesn't really require extreme wealth. And instead, it's more about aligning spending with values, saving intentionally, and designing a life that gives you options. I have stability, a plan, and I'm spreading the life I want across every year, not saving it for the end. One of the biggest problems with traditional retirement, early or not, is that people lose their sense of purpose overnight. Their work, community, identity, and daily contribution disappear all at once, and that's not freedom, that's kind of a shock. Why not build purpose continuously? Why not take breaks now, create now, contribute now? And I think longevity is where real wealth is built, financially, physically, mentally, just like investing. You don't sprint, burn out, and then expect compounding to save you. When people talk about money, one of the simplest and most powerful concepts I find is net worth. So net worth is a snapshot of where you are financially at a given point in time. It's not about income or salary. It's your assets minus your liabilities. That's everything you own minus everything you owe. And everything you own has a value. So when I track net worth, I actually look at it in a few different ways. First, I track total net worth, which is simply all of your assets minus all of your liabilities. And that's the big picture number. So that's number one. Then I track what is called liquid net worth, or some form of what is called liquid net worth. And this is where you focus on the assets that are more easily accessible or could realistically be used if needed. Then you minus the liabilities. So instead of counting everything you own, we're looking at more of the accounts and the assets that provide flexibility and financial security. And then I also track net worth in two different ways personally. I look at my individual net worth, and then I look at our combined net worth as a household with my husband. And that just helps me understand both my own financial position and how we're doing together as a team. What makes net worth so useful is that it gives you a clear physical number, something concrete you can track year to year. I do like tracking things, so progress with money often feels slow or invisible, especially when you're paying down debt or investing for the long term or building financial security. And tracking net worth helps you see that progress even when it doesn't feel obvious in daily life. A lot of people carry debt for valid reasons like education, starting a business, or investing in themselves earlier in their careers or late in their careers. So debt isn't automatically bad, I think, but it does require a plan. Having a clear strategy for paying it down while also saving and investing for the future is what creates stability. And net worth helps bring all of those moving pieces together. For me personally, one of the most important ways I think about net worth is through the lens of liquid net worth. And many people include their primary residence and their vehicles when calculating net worth, and that's perfectly common. I don't. And realistically, when are you going to be selling your primary home and use all of that money to live on? In some form, you're almost always going to need a place to live, and that goes for your vehicle as well. It depends on where you live, but for me, I live in a place where I will always be using a vehicle. Public transportation is far and few between. Few and far between, I should say. Because of that, I don't include our primary home or vehicles in my net worth calculation. What I do include are assets that could realistically support financial security or be converted if needed. Investment properties, stocks, retirement accounts, cash, and even larger assets like a boat or equipment that could be sold. Some people for liquid net worth do not even include the retirement assets. I do. So on the liability side, I include all debts, and that's student loans, credit cards, business loans, and any other outstanding obligations. So for investment properties, I also don't use the total market value. I focus on equity. I include only the equity that has been applied to the property as an asset, and then subtract what's still owed on the mortgage. That gives me a much clearer picture of what I actually own. If the market value has increased since buying the property, I don't necessarily apply this to the asset. I consider it a bonus, and I might apply the increase in market value when considering my overall net worth. Because of this, I effectively track two numbers, my total net worth and then liquid net worth. Both are useful. Your total net worth would include everything, and that would mean it would include your primary home, it would include your vehicles, every asset that you own, minus your liabilities. And then the liquid net worth would be minus your home, minus your primary vehicle. And if you want to get even into the specifics, you can minus your retirement accounts or any restrictive accounts. Just keep it consistent over time, and that will give you two different numbers. Your total net worth will be probably a lot larger, and especially if you have a lot tied up in your home and your vehicle. Those would be the main differences between the two of the total net worth and then the liquid net worth. Total net worth can be motivating and exciting to watch grow. Liquid net worth, however, gives a more realistic view on flexibility, financial resilience. Looking at only one number can be misleading, which is why I think tracking both is valuable. Now, some people consider liquid net worth to not include even retirement accounts, like I said before, because they're considered restricted to access until a certain age. I consider retirement accounts in my liquid net worth because I will use the money in them eventually. And if need be, I could indeed access the money in them, knowing that I would be penalized by a certain percent if I drew the money out early. There's no single way to track net worth. Keeping your metrics consistent is probably the most important if you want a realistic view from year to year. Some people use spreadsheets and some use apps. Sometimes I just write it down on a paper with a date on top. The method doesn't matter nearly as much as being consistent and honest with the numbers. So I also don't track it every day or super frequently, not every week either. Net worth doesn't change that quickly, and it's easy to get too tied up in the numbers. And you can really focus on it, which is good and bad. For me, checking in a couple of times per year is enough, I'd say, to stay on track and make sure I'm moving in the right direction. Doing it at the beginning of the year is great, and then it's a good way to reset and focus for intentions for the coming year. Make a plan. A lot of people set a big milestone, like reaching $1 million in net worth, and that can be a great motivating goal as well. But the best goal is to figure out your own personal number and your own milestones. For some people, the first milestone might simply be getting back to zero. That was mine personally after graduating school and then buying a business. It's not flashy, but it's incredibly meaningful, and it's a great milestone. If you use an app or method you really like for tracking, feel free to email me. I'd love to share good recommendations in future episodes. And remember, no matter what your number is, whether it's higher or lower than you expected, you have time to change it. Net worth isn't about judgment or comparison. It's about awareness. Start where you are, make a plan, and take the next step forward. So let's look at a couple numbers from the Federal Reserve 2023 Survey of Consumer Finances report that came out in October of 2023. The report comes out every 3 years. triennially. I can't even say that word. Triennially. So the next one should be this year in 2026. When you hear statistics about net worth in the US, it's important to pay attention to median net worth and not just the average, because the two numbers tell a very different story. The average net worth is distorted by extremes, I would say, because the average is calculated by adding up everyone's net worth and dividing by the number of households. In a country like the US, the wealth is highly concentrated at the very top, and a small number of ultra-wealthy households dramatically inflate the average. So it pulls it upward. And then the median net worth reflects the typical household, I would say, more realistically. The median is the midpoint. So half the households have more than this amount and half have less. This makes it far more realistic benchmark for understanding where most people actually stand financially. When you look at a median net worth, you're seeing a number that better represents everyday families and not the outliers. And if you do compare yourself to the average net worth, it can feel like you're farther behind, even if you're doing reasonably well. So that can lead to frustration, unrealistic goals, or the belief that something's wrong with what you're doing. So median net worth provides a better planning baseline. Looking at the net worths and these numbers help answer practical questions like, am I generally ahead, behind, or close to where most households are? Are my savings and debt levels typical for my stage of life? So let's look at some numbers from the Federal Reserve, this survey of consumer finances from 2023. So we're just going to focus on the median net worth and not the average net worth, because it's that more realistic number. And we're going to go by the age of head of household. So we're going to start off with people who are under 35. So the median net worth for people who are under 35 for people in the US is $39,000. So if you have accrued more than $39,000 by 34, I would say you are above half of the households in the US comparatively for the median net worth. So that's great. So of course, everyone should have their own personal number, but this is a good baseline. So if you are under 35 years old and you have more than $39,000 accrued, that's a great benchmark. Congratulations. So let's take a look at the next category, and that would be people who are 35 to 44 years old. Now, the median net worth for this age group is $135,600. So if you have reached age 44 and you have over than $135,600, then you have more than the median net worth. So let's look, and that is great as well. So, congrats. Let's look at the next category. That is ages 45 to 54 years old. So if you have reached age 54 and you have accrued more than $247,200, then you have reached more than the median net worth for that age group. And now we jump up to the next age group, 55 years to 64 years. Now that age group has accrued $364,500 for the median net worth. So if you have accrued more than that by age 64, you have accrued more than the median, not the average, net worth for households. Now we jump up to the largest median net worth, and this is the retirement age. So usually by age 65, you're looking at retirement. This is ages 65 to 74. The median net worth is $409,900. That is about the highest. And then at that point, we start to see it go down because we see people using and taking money out of their portfolios to live off of more so than other ages. So if we jump up to ages 75 plus, the median net worth is $335,600. Now, further episodes, I kind of like to go into how this has changed over time throughout the years. It's interesting. And then maybe we could look at the average as well. And I'd also like to look at if you want to reach that number by, say, age 65 or 64, what you would need to have in your portfolio at ages 20, 30, 40 to reach that number. But that is for another episode. So you have started along your path of tracking net worth, which is great. You have some numbers. Figure out your own number, what's good for you. Always consult a financial professional, since this is just my thoughts on the matter. But to leave you with a thought, progress builds confidence and milestones keep you engaged. So remember, your net worth is a number. It's just information. It's not a judgment. Wherever you are today is just your starting point, and you can change it with time, consistency, and a plan. If you start now, you write it down, revisit intentionally. That is how wealth is designed. So celebrate that you have taken a step towards financial freedom and flexibility, and we'll see you at the next show. Thank you.